As I was saying, talking about the 2019 features is what we've got coming up for you for the next 30 minutes. Max is helping me out on video, and it is, as I said, a bit of we consider it a bit of a privilege because the whole team has been working for the past like 6 to 9 months. We've worked really hard to get as many great features in for you, and cramming them into 30 minutes is going to be a bit of a challenge. Consider it a bit of a vertical slice. Some of the smaller things we've left out, but sort of the main features, we've summarized them in video form. We'll be running you through them. And keep in mind, everything that you're going to be seeing here will also show up in the workshop. So we'll be going way more in depth in, all right, how it actually works, how to work with it. This is more sort of the bird's eye perspective of everything that is new in 2019. So with that, I think we can continue, and let's kick things off with our new flexible fire. This is our answer to a request that we've been hearing a lot of, and that's mostly, all right, how can we get fires that are not only larger, but that we have more control over in terms of how we compartmentalize them? So what we've done is we've created an entirely new type of fire system, separate from our previous system. It uses a different kind of technology, and this one's one of the main benefits is that this one is optimized for what we call cropping. So what you've seen in the video is you can actually put the fire inside of a box and make the sides come in, and you crop it, and it cuts off the fire with 100% accuracy. So this technology is one that we're also planning to be using for other like future particle effects in the future as well. This is our first foray into this. Another great aspect of using this particular type of technology as compared to the previous one is that it scales much more. You can scale a single fire object up to a much larger volume than you're used to from the previous fire effects. And we actually have better performance on that fire effect than the previous fire effects. And this was like a very important thing for us to do. If large volumes of fire need to be present in the scenario, we want to be able to maintain our performance and have that control. So both of these features were sort of main drivers of this new fire effect. We're actually very eager to get your feedback once you get your hands on it. Next up is the targeting functionality. This one might be familiar to some of you, depending on which version of XVR. Some of the projects have had it, and actually some of the objects in the core library sort of sneakily already received this. But the idea here is that for extinguishers, be they handheld or mounted on vehicles, we have now improved how you aim the extinguishing beams, be them foam or water, that come from there through this blue sphere. So you aim the blue sphere at where you actually want the beam to go, and the extinguisher itself aligns and arcs, and the system guarantees that at the pitch that you've set and at the distance that you set, the beam will reach, and you can sort of just by placing this object, which is a very hands-on way of doing it, you have absolute control. This target can also be locked, which is being displayed over here. And what that does is, no matter where the object that is extinguishing is being placed, the target remains in the same location. So even if you're not entirely sure where your extinguisher or your agent is going to end up, you have that absolute control of knowing that your beam is going to end up where you want it. So it's sort of like offload some of the busy work from the operator. Next up, the color picker. This is a property, let's say, of specific objects in our library. We've retooled some of our existing objects, but also added new ones. We've equipped them with the ability to change their main color. And we're going to see that being explained here in the context of vehicles. The objects that support this have a new setting called the color, which when you click on it, it gives you this color wheel where you can set any RGB value that you want, and the object will take that color. You can do that for one object at a time or for multiple ones. In the workshops, you'll get a good overview of which specific objects we've equipped with this functionality, but there's a particular one that I want to let you know about, and that's we've added 3 new extrication vehicles to the library, specifically an electric vehicle, a hybrid vehicle, and a new van, with also separate doors and parts. And these are all equipped with the color picker, so you can really mix things up. Next up, we have the improved crowds and the crowd animations and presets. So in 2018, we introduced the crowd volume, as I'm sure most of you know, which is a well-performing way of having a large amount of fully animated 3D avatars, bystanders in the crowd. We've now equipped them with the ability to also display a walking animation when they're being sent somewhere, which was something that we felt was very essential. And we've also added new presets, so you can mix and match animations to create certain mood states for the crowd, a cheering crowd, or a crowd that is scared, a crowd that is cheering, a crowd that is rioting. And you can sort of blend all that together to very easily take hold of a large amount of bystanders or crowdees and move them around the scenario. This is also sort of part of like a longer track. We're aiming to improve the flexibility and the performance and sort of the utility of this crowd object. One of the things that we're going to be working on after this for future versions is also making sure these crowds are aware of their context. You know, when you send them down smaller corridors or streets, that the volume as a whole condenses. So some of that work is taken off your hands. So for now, walking, running animations and presets. Next up, we have rotating wheels for all vehicles. We introduced rotating wheels for traffic vehicles, and they were of course already available for vehicles that were inhabited by a participant in the exercise. But we've now got it working for all vehicles in the library, regardless of whether or not they're being boarded by an active participant at any moment in time. The rotational velocity of the wheels is actively calculated based on the diameter and the speed and direction of the vehicle. So even if you have vehicles with wheels with different diameters, tractor for instance, large wheels in the back, small wheels in the front, the rotational velocity of the individual wheels matches what one would expect. Moving right along. VR improvements. Very already mentioned it. We have our VR setup in the back. I really recommend you have a go at that somewhere during the next 2 days because we've really improved. We've made a big expansion in terms of our VR offering. The version that we introduced in 2017 is what we called base support, meaning that you could wear the goggles in any scenario and look around. But we've now made usability and functionality improvements. From a usability perspective, we have added a layout, so when you look at the controller, you know what every button does, and we've improved the teleport usability from an interaction point of view. We've added a whole lot of possibilities. What we're already seeing is the ability to interact with objects and doors in the world. So you can open the hood or the front or the back of the car, all the car doors, but also regular doors belonging to buildings in the environment. So you can move around and teleport more organically compared to before. We've also added the ability to take any of the placed objects from our library and to make it possible for the participant to pick them up. That can be done either with or without physics, meaning that if physics are turned off, if the object is let go, it sort of stays floating in the air. If you turn physics on, it actually falls to the ground. When it is let go, it's sort of up to the scenario builder to decide what kind of interaction is more relevant for them. And like I said, this applies to all the placeable objects. The builder sort of decides which of them can be picked up. And naturally, this also applies to models that you've imported yourself. Finally, not being shown in the video, but we do have it. We've added support for the experimental Vive tracker. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that, but it's a device by HTC that you can use to make physical objects trackable in virtual space. The tracker itself is being tracked, and if you match a 3D object in the virtual, in our world, with an object in the real world with matching dimensions, you suddenly have an object with real physicality and weight that is also present in the virtual world. So we've added support for that because we're very curious to see if we enable that, what kind of use cases or interactions people will come up with. Next up, the custom connectors. This one's for the builders. Many, of course, know that we have the ability to connect objects together in the software through the connector functionality. But I'm sure anyone who knows that has run into a situation where they either ran out of connectors or didn't have a connector available in the location where they wanted to connect something. So you would have to repurpose another connector and move something around. We're introducing, to sort of alleviate that, we've introduced custom connectors, which gives you the ability to connect any two objects together, and it creates a new connector for the occasion, which is permanent on the object. So even if you disconnect the object that you've used to create the custom connection, the connector is still there, and you can use it in your events, in your task logic. So this is even for instance, for objects that don't even have connectors in the first place. It works for all the objects. They're all compatible with each other. So finding solutions for certain scenario building necessities should become a lot easier. After you've created custom connectors, they are specific to the object itself. They don't necessarily get saved to the core version of that object in the library. But we have something for that as well, which brings me to the next feature, which we call favorites. It's a bit of a rebrand of the so-called custom objects. Basically, what favorites are about is that you take an object or a series of objects that you've placed, you've customized, you've changed their properties, you've added custom connectors, and you say, all right, I want to reuse this particular configuration. What you can do is you can select either that single object or that group of objects and save them to the object library. You give them a name, you give them a description, and then they show up in the list of placeable objects. That we already had. What we have now is that favorites get saved as individual files instead of being saved as one big bulk file. That means that it's actually far easier to exchange, reuse, and share individual favorites either within your organization between builders or across organizations. We've designed it specifically to sort of enable this exchange of like handy reusable objects. Secondly, these individual files also follow the scenario format that we've introduced in 2018, meaning that any custom images, custom sounds, custom 3D models that you've added also end up in the file itself. So if you work with custom content a lot, you can sort of take that and turn it into like a single chunk of data that you can easily throw to other people and reuse it in that way. Yes, and for those who already had a lot of custom objects in the old system, we've set up a converter in Control Center in case, so you don't have to remake them. Next up is the improved weather system. I'm sure many of you have seen it already due to Rindert's handiwork on the marketing videos. We've completely overhauled our weather system, mostly for visual improvement without having to come at the cost of performance. We've simplified setting the weather conditions. We've kept the original presets, but we've narrowed down the amount of sliders and options that you have to tweak in order to get the result that you want. And there's a major upgrade, as I'm sure you can see, in terms of the visual quality, be that the stars, the way sunlight interacts with everything in both the clouds, but also physical objects in the world space. And also the clouds themselves with a dynamic cloud coverage slider, the way it's dynamically generated, the way weather states transition from one to another. It all looks a lot better. So we're quite happy with that. Let's see, now we have a couple of Control Center centric features coming up, and we're going to switch over to some new environments after. But first up, Control Center. A couple of quality of life things that we've added. First of these is what we call automatic scenario version upgrading. What do I mean with that? I'm sure our active users know that every time we introduce a new version of the software, the scenarios need to be upgraded. And traditionally, this would mean that you would have to open it. Loading that old scenario would take it through the conversion. Then you would have to inspect it and save it again. Make sure you overwrite the file to make that conversion permanent, which means waiting on load screens and then sort of repeating this action. And we really wanted to take that off your hands. So the way this works in 2019 is you actually see which version the scenario was last saved in. And if that is an older version, it will give you the ability to upgrade either one by one or in bulk. You can do it for a specific selection of scenarios if you only want to convert those, or you can just do the whole library at once. The wizard will confirm what you're about to upgrade and sort of take care of that for you. Of course, when we do this, the system also automatically generates backups of the old version of the scenarios and puts those in a dedicated backup folder. So if you ever find yourself needing to go back to a prior version of XVR, you can take that entire backup folder, restore it to your storage, and just continue where you started. So that is a lot of, sort of like work that we don't want you to be doing. We want the system to be taking care of that for you. Next up, very already teased it. The self-led startup. As you undoubtedly know, normally you would start an XVR training with at least one operator and then one or more participants, and the operator sort of handles the world and makes sure that the world responds to a participant. What we've created now is a new form of publishing where instead of starting your scenario in sort of like full operator mode, you start it in self-led, which leads to a simplified startup wizard. Where the only real option that you have is which role in the scenario do I want to have, and then it's off to the races, which means that people that are not used to starting up XVR, you know, like any participant can figure that one out. What happens then is instead of starting in the traditional way, you are immediately inserted into the scenario with the selected role, and from there on, the scenario plays itself out. One thing to keep in mind with this is that from a building philosophy perspective, you have to sort of account for the fact that there won't be an operator or a human to respond, so you have to compensate for that with multiple choice pop-ups, triggers. It really changes the way you build the scenarios, and if that's something that you're curious about, we have a workshop that will sort of specifically go into this change in philosophy. And besides that, we're also very curious to see what kind of experiments on your side flow from us enabling this, because we expect that this is a theme that we're going to be growing in the future. We're probably going to be needing to add more tools as the years pass to sort of make the building of self-led scenarios easier. Last on the control center list is the live session tab. This one is specifically designed with large training centers in mind, or setups where, as an operator, lead operator, you don't necessarily have visual contact with all your computers. The idea now is that when you start an XVR session, any session, build, train, or review, Control Center will switch to this specific mode, where it will list every computer that is currently in the network and highlight its status. So that's yellow for loading, green for ready to go, red for disconnected, and you can also open up an individual computer and get a bit more information about what it is doing, which software is it running, which automatic IP address has it been assigned, and what is specifically that computer doing, what is the status for every piece of software. So the whole idea here is that from your central lead operator perspective, you should have a much better overview and control of your exercise. You know exactly what is going on all your computers, even if you don't necessarily see all of them. So especially for larger centers, knowing, are we good to go, can we start, this tab will help you with that. That's it on the control center end. Let's switch over to some new environments, because we have two new on-scene environments, the first of which we call Metropolis, which is a modern European city center. We've created this to sort of answer the rising demand for scenarios that take place in dense urban city centers with tight spaces, narrow roads, difficult areas that are difficult to access. And this particular metropolis has been sort of inspired by multiple large European cities at once. There's a bit of The Hague in there, there's a bit of Prague in there. I don't have the full list, but we sort of took a spectrum and said we're going to do a little bit of every building style, put all of that together, so there's something for everyone. And on top of that, we've equipped the environment with a lot of points of interest that could be interesting for scenario creation. We have stuff like a shopping center, we have an outdoor garage, we have a public school building, we also have different types of parks and interactive buildings. And beyond that, there's even an underground. There's a subterranean parking garage and a metro station, both of them accessible from street side through different types of stairways and tight roads, which can create all kinds of precarious situations, which will be interesting from a learning perspective. So this environment is jam-packed with sort of like ideas and opportunities, and I'm sure that there will be plenty of value from a scenario building perspective to find here. We're very curious how you like it. Please let us know. Yeah, maybe we could play. I think this is the end of the video, right? We have a nice little park here. Let's enjoy for a bit. I went too fast. A water tower, I forgot to mention, and a dedicated church building, a town city hall. multiple accessible houses. There's a harbor side with that you can sort of like look across the water. A lot of stuff to be found. Next up is another new environment, Virtus Airport. So throughout the years, we've created quite a few tailor-made airport environments for specific customers, and we've been wanting to make at least one airport available to the general customer base for quite some time. And that has always been kind of difficult to do, considering the sensitive nature of these airport layouts. You know, like putting that information out there, you can understand why these parties might not necessarily want that. So we've taken kind of a similar approach to what we've done with the Metropolis environment. We've taken multiple airports and we've sort of combined them into a collection that can't really be distinctly recognized as one individual airport, but has the necessary features of an airport that you would expect. And that is everything from you know, like the two terminals, refueling stations, and tanks on the outside. We have some interactive buildings surrounding the airport, like for instance a hotel. And the inside of the airport has also been modeled, so you can even do scenarios that take place inside of the building. So plenty of opportunities to go around there. Last thing I can mention, which I think the video is about to go into, is that the landing lights on the tracks outside of the airport have also been added, so they can be turned on at night and they're all completely visible. So for that particular bit of realism, if that is needed, that is also like baked in to the environment, ready to go. So we're almost there, but we have one more feature that we would like to share with you before we send you off on the rest of the program. And let's sort of stay in this theme of environments. This new feature that we have is sort of represents a technological track that we're entering for 2019 that will be able to keep us going for quite some time. We call it path objects. So the idea behind a path object is that you take some type of infrastructure, be it a road or a cycling path or anything that sort of follows that rhythm, and you apply a regular path logic to it. So you draw individual nodes, which you can drag around, the type of road that you want, how many lanes does it have a hard shoulder or not, how many, you can tweak that. But that is only where the fun starts, because after you've done that, you can start adding what we call path elements, which are repeating elements along the side or on the road. What we see for here, for instance, is a guardrail is being set up for a section. But besides that, we also have stuff like traffic lighting. We have various kinds of vegetation, so that's shrubbery, trees, there's some elderberries maybe, and even highway location markers that you can sort of stamp at certain intervals and locations. And when you get a bit creative with this and you spend a bit more time, you can really create some really interesting geotypical locations within actually just a couple of hours. Another thing that we're seeing here is the ability to add overpasses, so you can take a concrete framing and support beams and apply that to only a section of the path, not the whole path, just the part that goes over the other road. And all of this really blends together. You add a waterway, you add a bicycle path. We're speeding the video up here a little bit to sort of get you to the final result a little quicker. But this is a good impression of what you're able to do with just a couple of hours of actually sort of just loosely messing around. And the abilities that we can offer with this technology are sort of only beginning here. We now have, in this version, mostly offer types of roads with some basic infrastructure, but we're expanding on this offering in coming years. So that is anything from railway tracks, from walls to fences to hedges. In infrastructure, a lot of this stuff repeats. So be sure to let us know what type of content would be relevant for you, because we're going to, now that we have this base technology in place, we're going to be elaborating on that a lot in the years going forward. And this is also part of a broader philosophy where we basically say, hey, we want you to be able to customize your environments and tweak them and add to them or remove from them as you see fit. And to do that in a way that performs well. because that is the final sort of bullet point that is essential for the path objects, is that all of the objects that are stamped along the path are like like level of detail enabled elements. And they actually therefore perform way better than if you were to manually place all those trees, all those location markers, all those guardrails. All those objects would use the complete simulation logic. We're bypassing that in its entirety by using this system. So we want to sort of expand on this, give you the tools to modify environments, and do that in a very user-friendly way, but also in a way that keeps the performance intact. That is mostly it, actually, for us now. So all that I really have to say is we hope you enjoyed 2019. Workshops are a great opportunity to sort of like try these features out for yourself. On behalf of Max and myself, thank you so much for your attention and enjoy 2019. Thank you.